House Republicans have issued a subpoena for the bank records of President Biden's son, Hunter Biden, and brother, James Biden.
Yeah, this comes after star witnesses in the first impeachment inquiry against President Biden ended up testifying that they did not have proof that he committed impeachable offenses. In fact, the hearing didn't bring any new information on Biden's alleged actions. The committee is investigating whether Biden engaged in impeachable offenses under the U.S. Constitution, specifically whether Biden was involved in or personally profited from his family's foreign business dealings, or whether he improperly influenced policy when he served as vice president. Now, the White House insists President Biden has done nothing wrong. Republicans handpicked 3 witnesses for this hearing, while Democrats selected 1 witness. But the testimony from those star witnesses, their own witnesses, did not support those Republican allegations.
I do not believe that the current evidence would support articles of impeachment. That is something that an inquiry has to establish.
I am not here today to even suggest that there was corruption, fraud, or any wrongdoing. In my opinion, more information needs to be gathered and assessed before I would make such an assessment.
NBC News White House correspondent Monica Alba joins us now. Monica, James Comer kicked off the meeting saying the House Oversight Committee, quote, uncovered a mountain of evidence revealing Joe Biden used his public office for his financial gain. So far, there's no evidence to back that up. So walk us through what happened yesterday.
Yeah, really yesterday there was this expectation that there were going to be some new details, a potential linkage between Hunter Biden's business dealings and his father. Remember, we're talking about the time when Joe Biden was vice president, and none of that really came to any kind of an open area here. This is something Republicans continue to talk about or point out without ever being able to back up with any concrete evidence. And that is something certainly that the White House pointed to. They were releasing a statement every 30 minutes or so reminding Americans that that is the case, while pointing to the fact that Republicans were holding this first impeachment inquiry hearing while we are just hours away from a government shutdown, as you've just been discussing the impacts of. But here's a little bit more from the hearing itself, from James Comer and from Jamie Raskin, the Democrat, who also responded to all of this to try to remind people of what has and hasn't been discovered so far. Listen.
For years, President Biden has lied to the American people about his knowledge of and participation in his family's corrupt business schemes.
All right, so let's get it straight. We're 62 hours away from shutting down the government of the United States of America, and Republicans are launching an impeachment drive based on a long debunked and discredited lie.
And again, this is something that President Biden, when he's asked about it, or others in the White House, have simply said that he is proud of his son, that he loves his son, he supports his son, but he maintains that he never had anything to do with the business dealings of his son. Valerie and Stephen.
Monica, we can't ignore the timing of this inquiry. Of course, we were just talking to Julie Sirkin about the government shutdown that's on the horizon that could affect millions of Americans. Our latest NBC polling shows the majority of voters oppose these impeachment hearings. So what could this all mean for Republicans heading into the 2024 election?
Yeah, they're certainly running a political risk there. And again, this was something that even Republicans behind the scenes told our Hill team yesterday. They were really disappointed with how the hearing went. It was 6+ hours. They were expecting more from it. And so I think you may continue to see some, again, within the own party of the GOP saying that if there isn't going to be more that's presented here, this isn't going to amount to anything. And that they could argue is the whole reason for why they're doing this as a potential political stunt to try to put the focus on this, even if there isn't anything there currently to back it up.
Monica, you said it was a long day of hearings yesterday. So what is next?
So there could be more hearings. That is at least what Republicans have pointed to, that we don't have a firm date for that yet. And the government shutdown could complicate all of that. But what would need to happen if this were to potentially advance is there would need to be some kind of charge that they agreed and that the committee would try to bring, that they would, again, try to link Hunter Biden to Joe Biden on. So far, that hasn't happened. And if that were to happen somehow, then there would have to be a vote, which would require a majority. And again, that support right now just doesn't seem to be there. It could potentially, if something else is discovered. You mentioned those records that are going to be subpoenaed, but right now it's just not very clear. Guys.
Monica, thank you for that reporting. We appreciate it.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.